I started studying on Monday. By Wednesday, I wanted to delete the English language from my brain entirely.
Oh, man. That is beautifully, brutally honest, isn't it?
It really is. And, welcome to the Deep Dive Learner. I'm your host, and today we're tackling why trying to improve yourself usually feels, well, like a punishment.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here to break this down. Because that feeling of just wanting to quit, it is so incredibly common for anyone who's ever tried to acquire complex knowledge.
Exactly. And that quote I just read, that comes straight from the source material we're taking a deep dive into today.
Right.
Our core mission here is really exploring the psychological and emotional roller coaster of learning a new language. Now, our source specifically focuses on adult English learners, but honestly, the insights we're going to pull out apply to acquiring any major skill.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether it's coding, playing the piano, you name it.
Right. So we're using this fascinating source to break down exactly why you hit that point of wanting to quit, like why the process feels like mental torture sometimes.
Yeah, and most importantly, the actual psychological mechanics of how to survive that journey.
Exactly.
Because, that feeling of wanting to hit the delete button on a new skill, it isn't a sign that you're failing
Right.
or that you lack some, inherent talent. It's actually a completely predictable, cognitively measurable part of the human learning process.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yes.
Because our source material gives us a core thesis right out of the gate, and it's honestly incredibly liberating.
It really is.
The thesis is basically your brain is lying to you, and you're actually doing great.
Yeah.
And alongside that, it introduces this absolute gem of a concept that, quote, grammar is just vibes.
I love that framing so much. It just immediately strips away all that intense academic anxiety that paralyzes so many adult learners.
It totally does. But we should probably define what they mean by grammar is just vibes. Because, it sounds a bit counterintuitive and we're so used to rigid textbook rules.
It sounds a little too casual.
Yeah. When the source says that, they mean native speakers don't actually pause mid-sentence to mentally calculate verb conjugations.
Exactly. They aren't diagramming sentences in their head.
No. They rely entirely on pattern recognition. They just know what sounds right based on thousands of hours of exposure.
That internal rhythm.
Right? That vibe is what you're actually trying to learn, not the mathematical rule itself.
And understanding that distinction is really crucial when we talk about how your brain lies to you about your own progress.
Right.
Because to really grasp why you suddenly want to quit on a Wednesday, you have to understand what happens to that initial burst of motivation we all feel on day one.
Oh, yeah. The honeymoon phase, the sponge phase.
Exactly.
You buy the fresh notebooks, you download the app, you learn how to say hello, thank you, where's the bathroom?
And you feel like a genius.
You do. Because going from knowing absolutely 0 words to knowing 100 words is this massive, visible percentage leap. You can literally feel the momentum.
It's a super intoxicating stage of learning because the low-hanging fruit is just everywhere.
Yeah.
But then, inevitably, the easy vocabulary runs out. You have to start stringing concepts together. You have to deal with syntax and nuance.
And that is exactly when everyone hits what the source calls the wall.
The wall, yes.
It sounds like a villain in a superhero movie. And honestly, it kind of feels like one, right?
Oh, it really does.
You could be months in or even a year in, and suddenly the momentum just evaporates. You're putting in the same amount of effort, but the wins are completely unnoticeable. Like you try to watch a movie and you still miss half the dialogue. And that's when the internal monologue turns toxic.
Right. You start thinking, maybe I'm just not a language person.
Exactly. Maybe my brain isn't wired for this. I've peaked.
But that toxic monologue is literally just the brain lying to you.
Yeah.
Because here's the most crucial reframing from our source material. Hitting the wall isn't a sign of failure. It's actually proof that you are entering a deeper, highly advanced stage of cognitive processing. The source introduces this really beautiful biological concept called root time.
Root time. I like that.
Think about a massive tree planted in the ground, right? For a long, long time, nothing seems to be happening above the surface.
Right, you're just looking at the branches.
Exactly. And if you judge it by the branches, you'd assume it's stunted or even dead. But underground, the root system is doing immense, complex work. It's expanding, it's fracturing rock, finding deeper water tables, building an anchor. The human brain does the exact same thing with language.
It's like downloading a massive software update in the background on your phone.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right. Your phone screen looks completely frozen. You tap it, nothing happens.
Yeah.
And you're instantly tempted to just do a hard reset because you think the device is broken.
Right. You want to force quit.
Exactly. But under the hood, millions of lines of code are being processed, sorted, and integrated. And what's fascinating is that just like a phone during an update, your battery is draining incredibly fast, even though the screen is dark.
That is a phenomenal analogy because the metabolic cost of learning is incredibly high.
Oh, yeah.
That sheer physical exhaustion you feel after, say, a 30-minute conversation in a new language, your brain is literally burning calories to build new neural pathways.
Wow.
The progress has simply gone underground. It feels like standing still, but you're actually growing roots.
But that's the agonizing part of the human experience, isn't it?
How so?
Well, if the progress is invisible and the software is updating in the background without a progress bar, how do we know it's not actually broken?
Right.
If we're burning all this energy, we need to know what to actually look for so we don't just throw our hands up and quit.
Which is exactly why the source takes time to outline several highly counterintuitive signs of progress.
Okay, let's hear them.
These are phenomena that typically trigger feelings of failure, but cognitively speaking, they are absolute proof that the root system is expanding.
Let's explore those because
Yeah.
the first one they mention is that you start noticing your own mistakes.
Yeah.
And I actually have to push back on this a little bit. Wait, so feeling terrible about making a mistake is actually a win?
I know, it sounds backwards.
I mean, hearing myself stumble, realizing mid-sentence that I used the wrong past tense, that feels like the exact opposite of a win. It feels humiliating.
It feels awful emotionally, for sure.
Yeah.
But logically, you have to consider what was happening before.
Okay.
In the very beginning, you didn't even know you were making mistakes. You were just sailing past them, blissfully unaware, happily butchering the language.
Oh, man, that's true.
The fact that you now hear the error as it leaves your mouth means your internal ear has calibrated. Your brain's error detection software is finally online.
Okay, I see. I'm reasoning through this. It's sort of like proofreading a document, right?
Exactly.
You literally cannot fix a typo until your eyes are sharp enough to spot the misspelled word.
Precisely.
So the ability to notice the mistake is the progress. If you can't hear it, you can't correct it.
That's spot on. Now, another hidden sign of progress is when things that used to be incredibly difficult suddenly feel boring.
Boring. Okay.
Yeah. Think about the mental gymnastics required to formulate a simple present tense sentence back on week 2. It felt like solving complex algebra.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, months later, you just say it. But instead of throwing a parade for that mastery, you just view it as boring, mundane textbook stuff.
Because we're already looking at the next hard thing.
Exactly. Your eyes are fixated on the next impossibly hard mountain, like the subjunctive mood. We constantly move the goalposts on our own success.
We really do take our own mastery completely for granted. And, that actually explains another frustrating gap I always feel.
What's that?
I can sit down and watch a Spanish movie and I follow the plot perfectly. I understand the jokes, I get the context.
Right.
But the moment someone asks me to summarize the movie out loud, my brain just empties. The words vanish. It feels like a massive step backward to understand so much but be able to speak so little.
Yeah, what you're describing is the universal gap between comprehension and production. And again, it feels like a defect, but it's actually a feature of neurobiology.
Really?
Yes, comprehension always leads production. Your ability to understand acts like a tractor beam, slowly pulling your speaking ability forward.
But why is the gap so wide? Like, why can't we just say what we understand?
It comes down to cognitive load and neural pathways. Passive recognition, so listening to a word and understanding it, requires significantly less neural activation than active recall.
Okay, that makes sense.
The neural pathways for recognizing a pattern form much faster than the complex motor neuron pathways required to, pull a specific word out of the void.
Right.
Coordinate your tongue, lips, vocal cords, and actually speak it in real time. The gap exists because your brain has to expand its passive database before it can wire the active output.
That makes so much sense when you look at the underlying mechanics. And
Yeah.
I guess that also explains what happens when that passive database starts leaking into your active subconscious.
Exactly.
The source talks about this fourth sign, spontaneous English, like catching yourself dreaming in the new language, or seeing a coffee mug and thinking, Taza before you think mug.
That is such a magical threshold because it means you are no longer mathematically translating from your mother tongue into the target language.
Right, you're not doing the equation in your head anymore.
Exactly. The language is shifting from an academic subject you study into a medium you just exist in.
Oh, I love that. And bringing us to the fifth sign, what's fascinating here is how the source material ties all of this back to the ultimate hidden sign of progress, which is frustration.
Yes, what's fascinating here is they drop this brilliant quote, "Frustration is ambition in a bad mood."
Wow. Frustration is ambition in a bad mood. It completely reframes the emotional struggle.
It really does. Because
Yeah.
if you didn't care about the language, you wouldn't be frustrated. You would just be totally apathetic.
Exactly. Getting frustrated means your baseline standards for yourself have risen. You're demanding more from your brain because you inherently know you're capable of more.
Right. It is the ultimate sign of deep investment.
But this raises an important question, right? If frustration is actually a good sign of ambition and noticing mistakes is a cognitive win, why do the vast majority of adult learners still quit?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Like, if these are all positive indicators dressed up as negative emotions, what is the trap that catches everyone?
The trap is the illusions we surround ourselves with.
Well,
We
yeah.
sabotage our own root time with external and internal myths.
Okay.
And the absolute biggest one is the comparison trap, which, frankly, social media has basically weaponized against us.
Oh, social media is uniquely devastating for language learners.
Completely.
You scroll through your feed and see some influencer with perfect lighting effortlessly dropping local idioms,
Right.
and they're claiming they achieve fluency in, like, 3 months. And your immediate thought is, I've been studying for a year and I still stutter at the bakery. I am fundamentally broken.
Right, but what you don't see is the reality of their journey. You don't see the 100 takes they deleted before posting that flawless 1-minute reel.
Exactly.
You don't see the 3 years they spent privately crying over verb conjugations before they started their channel.
Yeah.
As the source beautifully puts it, you are comparing your messy Chapter 3 to their highly edited Chapter 27. It is a fundamentally invalid comparison.
I love that. Chapter 3 to Chapter 27.
And the only valid comparison in learning is you today versus you from a month ago or a year ago.
Right.
Furthermore, the source highlights this fascinating psychological phenomenon. Almost everyone privately believes they are the one person who is the most behind.
Oh, wow.
It's a shared delusion. You sit in a classroom or you browse a language forum, and you assume everyone else was handed a secret instruction manual for their brain that you somehow missed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that shared delusion feeds directly into the other massive illusion we carry, the myth of fluency.
Yes, the myth of fluency.
We all have this pristine, untouchable fantasy in our heads of what a fluent speaker sounds like.
We picture a national news anchor.
Mm.
Zero hesitation, absolutely no ums or ahs, perfectly constructed grammar, and a completely neutral, untraceable accent.
Right.
But if we actually look at reality, that version of fluency doesn't even exist for native speakers.
It really doesn't. Think about how you speak your mother tongue. We hesitate all the time.
All the time.
We trail off mid-sentence. We completely forget the word for spatula and have to gesture wildly and say, the flippy cooking thing.
Exactly. And we break strict grammatical rules constantly in casual conversation because casual conversation is about vibes, not textbooks.
Right. And the concept of a neutral accent is just entirely fabricated.
Everyone has an accent. There is no such thing as speaking without one. Whether you're from New York, rural Scotland, Texas, or Sydney, everyone is speaking with a regional inflection.
Yeah.
The source argues we need to aggressively deconstruct this fantasy. Real fluency isn't perfection. Real fluency is simply removing the wall between you and the person you are talking to.
That's a great way to put it.
It means you can say what you mean and you can understand what they mean. Full stop.
And the danger of pursuing that fictional news anchor perfection is that it leads directly to what the source calls the silence trap.
Oh, the silence trap is brutal.
It really is. This is the thing that paralyzes almost every adult learner I know.
And the logic of it seems sound at first. The learner decides, consciously or unconsciously, that they're going to wait until they feel confident before they start speaking to native speakers.
Right. I'll just study until I'm ready.
Exactly. They're going to stay in their room studying their apps until their grammar is bulletproof and their accent is flawless.
But the devastating irony of human neurobiology is that confidence only arrives through the act of speaking. You literally cannot study your way into confidence in a vacuum.
You absolutely cannot. The brain requires the friction of social interaction to cement the language.
Right.
Every time you open your mouth, even if the sentence completely falls apart and you use the wrong tense, your brain gets real-time, high-stakes feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You see the other person's face. You realize they still understood you despite the error. You learn what worked and what didn't. That is emotional and linguistic data you simply cannot extract from a textbook.
And our source gives us an absolute golden rule for breaking out of this silence trap.
Yeah.
It's something every learner needs to internalize. A broken sentence delivered with confidence will always communicate better than a perfect sentence that never leaves your mouth.
That is so true.
Most people out in the real world aren't waiting with a red pen to grade your grammar. They're just human beings trying to share a conversation.
Absolutely. And, having dismantled those big existential myths of fluency and comparison, we really need to bring this down to ground level.
Let's do it.
Because even if you completely master your mindset and you abandon the myth of perfection, you are still going to have objectively terrible days.
Oh, absolutely. The day-to-day obstacles are what actually derail the habit. And the source makes a critical, sanity-saving distinction here between a bad day and a bad level.
This is so vital for long-term survival.
Yeah.
A bad day is when you sit down to practice or you hop on a language exchange call and your brain is just thick fog.
Yeah.
You forget basic vocabulary you knew perfectly yesterday. You listen to a simple audio clip and comprehend absolutely nothing.
And the immediate panic response is, I'm getting worse. The language is leaking out of my ears. I've regressed.
Right. But the language hasn't vacated your brain. The neural pathways didn't dissolve overnight.
Exactly. They're just temporarily offline due to cognitive load.
You're stressed about work, you didn't sleep well, you skipped lunch, you have 10 other complex problems occupying your working memory. The brain is an energy-intensive organ, and on that particular day, it simply does not have the spare cognitive capacity required for high-level language retrieval.
Makes total sense.
So the golden rule here is, never quit on a bad day. Do not make permanent decisions based on temporary biological exhaustion.
It's exactly like going to the gym.
How so?
Well, if you go to the squat rack and have a terrible weak workout because you only slept 4 hours, you don't assume your leg muscles have literally evaporated.
Right.
You don't say, well, I guess I'm weak forever now. I should cancel my membership. You just acknowledge the reality. You had a bad day. Your battery was low.
Exactly.
You go home, you eat, you sleep, and you try again later. It is incredibly freeing to separate temporary fatigue from your permanent baseline ability.
That physical analogy translates perfectly to cognitive fatigue. And alongside bad days, learners also chronically suffer from what the source calls method guilt.
Oh, method guilt. The nagging, persistent anxiety that everyone else on the internet is using a secret, superior system, and you are wasting your time doing it wrong.
Yes. You feel guilty using flashcards because some YouTuber said pure immersion is the only valid way.
Right.
You feel guilty watching Spanish Netflix because a blogger said you should be reading dense grammar textbooks. You end up spending more time paralyzed researching the optimal method than actually learning.
So what is the reality? When you strip away all the marketing, what is the actual best method?
The source is remarkably definitive on this, and cognitive science backs it up. Consistency is the method. Everything else is just the container.
Consistency is the method. I love that.
The brain responds to frequency and repetition. 10 minutes a day of a silly gamified app you actually enjoy doing will always beat 3 hours of a rigorous textbook that you hate and will only open once a month.
Right. The best method isn't the one with the most scientific pedigree. It's simply the one you will consistently show up for.
Exactly. And sometimes the thing making it hardest to show up isn't the method, or the bad days, or the cognitive load.
What is it?
It's the actual human beings around you. This is a delicate but crucial reality the source addresses, dealing with naysayers.
Oh, yeah. People who laugh at your accent or correct your pronunciation with this sneering superiority or just dismiss your daily efforts as a waste of time.
Yeah.
That stings deeply. A failed grammar quiz is frustrating, but someone mocking your vulnerability, that sticks with you.
It really does, because language is so intimately tied to our identity.
Mm.
But we have to logically recognize that someone making you feel small for attempting something incredibly difficult is a reflection of their character, not your potential.
Well said.
As the source notes, the vast majority of people who mock language learners have never actually tried to learn a second language as an adult themselves.
That's a great point.
Because if they had, they would know the immense, terrifying courage it takes to open your mouth and intentionally sound foolish in the pursuit of growth.
So what does this all mean? We've talked about the underlying psychology, the cognitive load, the illusions of perfection, and the external traps. Let's pivot to action.
Okay.
If you, the learner, are currently staring up at the wall, feeling completely stuck and exhausted, how do we systematically climb over it?
The source outlines 5 highly tactical steps for survival at the wall.
Let's go through them.
Step 1 is to change the input, not the goal. If reading news articles in French is completely draining your battery, stop reading.
Yeah.
Switch to watching a cooking show or listening to a podcast about a hobby you already love. The overarching goal of acquiring the language remains the same, but the path you take to get there needs to change so you don't burn out.
You have to change the scenery to trick your brain into re-engaging.
Precisely. And step 2, which sometimes feels counterintuitive, is you need to go back to something easy.
Now wait, I have to stop you there and push back. If I am grinding away, trying to reach an advanced C1 professional level, and you tell me to go read a children's book or rewatch a cartoon I've already seen, aren't I just going backwards? Doesn't that feel like retreating?
I get why it feels like retreating, yes, but cognitively, it is strategic reinforcement.
How so?
Think about what happens when you're stuck at the wall. Your confidence is entirely depleted. Every single interaction feels like a grueling struggle.
Yeah, that's true.
By intentionally going back to material you can already comprehend effortlessly, you are giving your brain an engineered win. You're restocking your dopamine reserves.
Oh, okay.
It reminds your brain what success and actual fluency feel like, which rebuilds the psychological momentum you desperately need to tackle the plateau again.
So you're essentially reminding your brain that it does know things, proving that inner critic wrong. That makes total sense.
Exactly. It's all about managing your own psychology.
Right. What's step 3?
Step 3 is to talk to a fellow learner. We often obsess over finding fluent native speakers to practice with, but there is immense value in talking to someone who is in the messy middle right alongside you.
Oh, for sure.
They understand the specific, agonizing exhaustion of the process. It proves to your brain that you aren't the only one struggling with these exact hurdles.
Shared misery builds community, and community keeps you going.
Well put. Step 4. When you hit the wall, you need to shrink the goal.
Shrink the goal.
Yeah. When the daily to-do list says, learn English, that goal is so massive, heavy, and abstract that it creates overwhelming cognitive friction.
Right.
Your brain will look at that and choose to scroll on your phone instead. You have to shrink the goal down to something tiny and undeniable.
Like what?
Tell yourself, today, my only goal is to learn exactly 1 new vocabulary word. Or, I'm going to actively listen to exactly 1 minute of a video.
Because the friction to do 1 minute is basically 0. And once you start, you usually do more. A tiny goal accomplished is infinitely better for your habit formation than a massive goal abandoned.
Exactly. And the final survival tactic, step 5, is to remember why you started. Not in a vague, generic way, but pinpointing the specific, tangible spark. Was there a specific job abroad you wanted to apply for?
Right.
A specific unsubtitled film you desperately wanted to enjoy in its original format? A specific family member or partner you wanted to connect with on a deeper level?
You have to anchor yourself back to that original emotional spark, the reason you bought the fresh notebooks on day 1.
Exactly. That original reason is still entirely real, and it is still waiting for you on the other side of the wall.
Okay, to wrap this all up and synthesize what we've unpacked today, learning a complex skill, especially learning a language, is deeply messy.
Very messy.
It's nonlinear. Your progress is happening underground, often totally invisible to you while it drains your battery. But the wall you hit is not the end of the road. The wall is the road.
Everyone who is effortlessly fluent today went through this exact same agonizing struggle. They felt the exact same urge to delete the language from their brain on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
They aren't inherently smarter or genetically gifted. They simply didn't stop. And remember, the days you were too tired to study do not erase the hundreds of days you did. Your root system is holding on to far more than you think.
It's all about embracing the mess and trusting the invisible process.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If we accept that grammar is just vibes, and that imperfect consistency beats paralyzed perfectionism in language learning, where else in your life were you waiting to be perfect before you allow yourself to speak up or start.
Oh, wow.
What other walls in your life are actually just root time in disguise?
That is a fantastic thought to chew on. We demand instant perfection from ourselves in so many areas, and we really shouldn't. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive learner. Whether you're learning English, picking up an instrument, or trying to master any daunting new skill, don't delete it from your brain on Wednesday. Embrace the messy, crooked sentences of life, trust your roots, and keep going.